everyone, and welcome to the Metaphorix webinars for 2016. My name is Pauline Forder, and today we'll be looking at standard credit control and the creation of reminder letters in Microsoft Navision 2009. We will first look at how we activate the credit warnings themselves, and this is carried out through the sales and receivables setup, where we can then select the type of credit warning that we wish to display when we're entering our customer documents. We'll then have a look on the customer card itself, how we set the credit warning for the particular customer, and then we will go through some examples to see the various credit limit warnings that we can view, i.e. exceeded credit limit, overdue entries, or both. We'll then run the aged accounts receivable report, and I will be taking you through the various filtering options that you may want to use, the fact that we can export to Excel, and we can show the report in either a detailed or a summary form. We will then move on to reminder letters and how they are set up. We'll be looking at the reminder terms themselves, how the letters are designed and how we can add our own text to show at the top of our reminder letter or at the bottom of our reminder letter. We will then create the reminders themselves, and again I will show how to carry this out for a single customer, then as a batch job, and then when we're happy with our reminders, then we will issue the reminders to our customer. So let's start, and we will need to initially go into the sales and receivables area within financial management, setup, and sales and receivables setup. There is a field here, credit warnings, and in here we can decide which credit warnings we want applied. Do we want to show both of the warnings, just when the credit limit is exceeded, just when an overdue balance is on the customer account, or no warning at all? So we'll take a look at the customer card, and to apply a credit limit to a customer, it is simply done by adding a limit in the credit limit field. At the moment, for this customer, the credit limit is 0, which actually means it is an open credit limit. If the customer had no credit with you, then you would put in something like a penny, and that way every time a record was created, order or invoice, the credit limit error message would be displayed. Or if they have indeed a valid credit limit with yourselves, then you just type in the value here. First of all, we'll have a look at a particular customer so that I can just prove those points for you. So we have a customer called Guildford. Would help if I was in the name field, of course. And there it is. So I'll just have a look at that. And this customer has got a £500 credit limit, and therefore and a balance of 600. So therefore, if we were to create an invoice for this particular customer, then we would get the credit check warning. Possibly as well, we might get a balance overdue. So we'll have a look at that just to prove that point. So in here, I will just select my customer, and indeed you will see the customer has an overdue balance and the customer's credit limit has been exceeded. So both of those options are true in this particular case, and then the user, dependent on the processes within your organisation, will either cancel or go through and process the document. I'm just going to say no to that at the moment, because what I want to show you now is one of our other customers, which is the Cannon Group. So selecting the Cannon Group, and here we can see that the customer has just an overdue balance, and it does feed back all the information for you. It has the balance amount, the outstanding amount, and the actual overdue balance as at the system date. Again, I'll just show you one more example. Oops, if I spelt it right. Fairway, select that customer, and here it is indeed just the credit limit that has been exceeded, because the outstanding amount is 1,900 and the credit limit is set at £1,000. Okay, so that's our options in terms of how we can utilise the credit warnings. What we'll do now is we'll go and have a look at the aged accounts receivable report. So we find that still from our receivables menu, under reports and aged accounts receivable. As with every report within Dynamics NAV, you always get a dialog box whereby you can filter the information that you're using or that you want to use, and also you have an options tab. So in the customer filter, this would be if you only wanted perhaps produce a range of customers, or only those customers that were a different currency perhaps. But on the options tab, this is where you're specifying various informations about how you want the report to be generated. Now, this data is going to look a bit funny because, as normal, we're using one of Microsoft's Cronus databases, so it's going back to 2011. But this report I'm going to run aged as of February, the end of February. I have the option to decide whether I want to show it by due date, by posting date, or by document date, whichever is applicable to yourselves. Then you will make that selection. I can then choose to show what period length I want the aging to be done over. So I can use 1 month, 6 months, a year, weeks, as in 2W for 2 weeks, whatever I'd like to see. I also have the option, dependent on whether I've different languages set up on my database, to just print the amounts in LCY. And I can choose to see, to show whether I want the details, i.e. the individual items that are outstanding on my customer account, or if I don't tick it, it will show it as a summary. So first of all, I'll leave it just as a summary. We can then decide how we want our headings to be formatted. Do we want it in the date interval based on our period length, so from the 1st to the 31st, etc., or number of days, 0 to 30 or 0 to 31, etc. I can choose to print a new page at the change of the customer number. That would normally only be used when you're using the details, so I will leave that blank. And you'll notice that we can actually print to Excel. So I'm just going to preview that at the moment. So here's our report. It tells us the details of the report in terms of when we have run the report from, as of 28th February. We have our customer number and name. We have the currency code, the balance, and then any monies that are not due, i.e. any monies where the due date is in advance of 28th of February. So in this particular case, we don't have anything. And then we have the debt aged over the month as specified by the date on the report when you run it, and then going back to previous months and then any details after that. If you do use currency, you will notice at the bottom of your report you have a breakdown in the currency, different currency codes, and providing you the totals across those currency codes. So if we just run that again, just so I can show you the details, on the options this time I will still keep it as 1 month, but this time I'm going to change it to the posting date, and I'm going to ask for Navision to actually detail it for me so that I see the breakdown of the balance that's owed. So again, I will preview, and you will notice that date is still the same, aged by posting date, but against each of the customer we can see the detail of what makes up the balance for that particular account. Last but not least, I will run it again, and this time I will say print to Excel, and you can either do print or preview, whichever option you take will still generate the Excel report. On the front page it tells us what the settings were for our report, so if we were sharing this with a user who didn't have access to Navision, they would know the rules under which it was processed. And then within the data sheet we can see the breakdown, and we get on the Excel version, irrespective of whether we choose print details or not, we will always get the actual details excuse me, of all the invoices, credit memos, etc. that make up that balance. Apologies. So I won't bother to save that. So we will now move on to our reminder letters, and for our reminder letters we will need to go to the administration area within Dynamics NAV, in application, setup, general, that is totally wrong. It's in finance, of course, I knew that. In finance, and then reminder terms is the first place we go. Now, with regards to the reminder terms, it's entirely up to yourselves how you set this up. Some organisations will have a set of letters specific for the domestic customer, and as we can see in Cronus, they have split it between domestic and foreign. So it's entirely up to you. It's all about if your particular letters that you need to write to your customers need to take a different format dependent on the different type of customer that you have. So at this level you just give a code to the reminder term, you give it a description, and then you specify, if you wish, to the number or the maximum number of reminders that you are going to create. Now this is really relevant in terms of how many letters that you are going to create in the first place, and I will explain this a bit clearer in a moment. But basically, if you set up that you're going to send out 3 different types of letters to your customer, one saying, for example, sure, it slipped your mind, but these invoices are overdue. Letter 2 might be, despite our earlier reminder, these still remained unpaid. And letter 3, for example, could be, this has now been handed over to our legal department. So if you were using a maximum of 3 letters, what you can specify here is how many times that last letter, in this case number 3, will be sent out. So you might say that you are going to send that out to a total of 5 letters. So letters 1, 2 and 3, and then 3 would be repeated a further 2 occasions. Realistically, I think most people will just do it to the actual number of letters that you've sent. If they haven't paid you by now, then they're probably not going to pay you at all. Anyway, it's up to you. You can also choose to post interest and additional fees. Now, when doing this, setting this up, Navision will actually generate a charge invoice. And as we probably all know, most customers, even if you set a charge, they will only ever pay the actual outstanding balance. So what we normally recommend is that you just put a fee on the reminder letter and don't actually post the interest, because if you post the interest, you will have to create the credit memo when they don't pay you. So you can have this information set up, and you can also say the minimum amount of which the balance is to be outstanding before a letter is generated. So once we've set up the terms, we will then go to what is called the levels, and for levels you can read letters. So in here we determine the letters, the number of letters that we're going to write. In this case we've said 3 letters. You can then determine, either using the grace period and or the due date calculation, when, at what point that reminder letter will be generated. From the due date of, in the case of the first letter, it would be the due date of the invoice itself. So within 5 days, using it as a grace period, then the reminder function will select a reminder letter to be generated when the 5 days has been exceeded. Or, as I say, you can use the due date calculation, and indeed you can use both if you wish. As I said, there's the calculate interest, but if you do select that, tick the box, as I say, it will generate that interest invoice. So if you just enter the value in the additional fees, that will just be added to the reminder lines themselves without actually generating a physical document. So once we've set up our 3 letters and the rules under which those letters will be generated, we can then determine what text will be present on the reminder when it is printed. And we do that through the levels button at the bottom. So in our beginning text, we can add whatever text we like. For example, dear customer, as of, and then here we have what is called a variable, and there are various variables, and I will run through those with you in a moment. But as of, and this is for the due date of the reminder letter, the below invoices are now due for payment. So that's our beginning text. And then for our ending text, we can specify, please remit your payment of, and %7 being another variable, which is the outstanding amount, within 5 days, 10 days, whatever your terms are that you've set up. You can add in then a salutation at the bottom and put in just a generic email account so that they can email you, but really whatever you wish to see on your reminder letter. Letter 2, beginning text, despite our early reminder, your account still remains at, and then the value. And the ending text, again, just adding the various informations that you want. Whereas on our letter 3, our beginning text might be a little bit different, and in this case I've just said that we are going to be sending it through to our legal department, with the ending text that all further correspondence should be made through that particular body. So just to have a look at that text, or those variables that you can use. So this just means that when you use the variable, irrespective of which account it is and what the status of the account is, then the vision will just pick up these fields from the customer account and replace them in the body of the text for you. So you have the document date, the due date, interests, remaining rate, which is what I've used, and then the total, the remaining amount, which was on my letter number 2. So let's go back to creating our letters, but first, before we do that, we must actually just set up our customers to say that they are indeed going to be using or we're going to be sending them reminder letters, because you don't have to include all of your customers. And indeed, if you don't select on the customer card in the Payments Fast tab, if you don't select the relevant reminder terms code on a customer, then indeed the reminders will never be generated for that customer. So each customer that you will want to send reminders to, you must populate with the reminder codes. So now, just close that down. The reminders themselves are run within the periodic activities. Under reminders, and as I say, we have several ways in which we can run the reminders themselves. We can choose to select our customer manually. So if I wanted to, I could just drill down and pick up the customer, and then using the functions button, I would then suggest the reminder lines. And I then have some options. Only entries that are overdue, if they have an overdue amount, or I might want to include all entries, and I have the ability to include entries that might be on hold. Now, you could argue that if they're on hold, they're in dispute with the customer anyway, so you wouldn't want to show them, but it is indeed up to you as to how you want to do that. So that's one way I can do it. But the way that I think most of us will run through is by using the batch job, and we do that again from the functions button, but this time using create reminders. Again, we have some filtering. We can determine if we want to just run the batch job for a range of customers, or just perhaps for a currency code if you just wanted to do the EU ones or rest of the world ones, whichever. And again, on the options tab, we have to make some selections. We decide what we want the posting date to be, and in this case for this database, if you remember, we're looking back at 2013. Only entries with overdue amounts, whether we want to include are any entries that are on hold, and to use the header level control, i.e. using the letters dependent on our customer, because each time you run the reminders, you may be including customers that you've already sent reminder letter 1 to. Others, this might be the first time that you've generated letter 1 for them. So we will just say OK to that. And I'll just show you in the list view all of those that have been generated. So we'll just have a look at the various options. So back to our main screen, our actual reminder card itself. So the first one in our list is for a company called Progressive. Now I can tell from this layout that this was one of the non-domestic customers. It tells us at the top the posting date as per the process. It also tells us the reminder level, i.e. this is reminder letter number 1 for this particular customer. If I go on, I can see for our various other ones. Now you'll notice here the format of our letter has changed because this is indeed one of our domestic customers. So this is where I have the text, and if you remember, we had that variable %4 in this area, and here was the variable %7. Again, this is letter number 1. So if we now go on through, now for this particular customer, for John Haddock, this is now our letter 2. And we can see there is reminder letter 2, and it does tell us in the body here as well that it is reminder 2. Also, you'll notice that there is that additional fee that was set up, but because that additional fee was not ticked in the post interest on the level headers, it is being displayed on our letter, but will not be an invoice for that £10 will not have been generated. So we can then just go through the various other ones that we have. Now at this point in time, these are indeed just working documents. So if you want to, if it's a requirement, if you've included some entries that you didn't want to include, then you can adjust the screen in the normal way by just deleting lines, etc. Or indeed you can change any of the text that is being displayed. Once you have looked at your reminders, in order to actually post and generate and print the reminders themselves, you have to go through a function called issue reminders. Now this again comes from one of our buttons down the bottom, this time on the issuing. So just to show you what the printed document is going to look like, I'm just going to run the test report and just preview that. So at least it gives you an idea of how that letter is going to be put through. It's giving you the reminder letter for the customer at the top, the posting date, the reminder terms, the text that we've entered, and the details of the invoices that are overdue for payment, and our reminder text at or end text at the bottom. Okay, so to actually issue, from the issuing tab, we just go to issue, and automatically the reminders will be filtered by the reminder number that your cursor was on when you placed, when you went to the issuing tab at the bottom. If you want to issue all of your reminder letters, then you can simply remove the filter for that reminder number, and then on the options tab you then say that you do want to print, that you want to, if you want to replace the posting date. Now this would be used if you have generated your reminder letters perhaps the day previous, or perhaps on the Friday of the last week and it's now Monday and you're coming to send them now, so that you will have that date that you want to show on your document. So I'm just going to do the print for the one, and so I don't forget. So this was for John Haddock, so I'm going to say OK to this. So if we now go to our John Craddock, just to prove the other reminder letters are still there, whereas if I had have removed that filter for reminder letter 14, they would all have been issued. So if we go to our customer card and I find our John Haddock, and I go to our customer tab at the bottom, issued documents and issued reminders, I can see from my list view that I have got 2, and this is my first one. So this was reminder letter 1 that I ran the other day, and then reminder letter 2, which we have just done today. Okay, so that is how we run the reminder letters. As I say, at any time once you have run your reminders, let's just pop back to our reminder list. Oops. If you have run the reminders for any of your customers and you decide that you just don't want to send it out for whatever reason, then you can just simply highlight a line or multiple lines, and then just using the F4 or the delete key at the top, you can delete those reminder letters, because they're not issued reminders, they are just working documents. And then once you have selected all those that you want to send, then you can again go through to the issue, remove the filter, check on the options what you're going to do. I won't print these out. And if you want to change the posting date, and then just simply say OK, and it will process all of those reminders for you. Okay. So today we have been looking at the standard credit control offerings within Navision and how we can set up and create our reminder letters. If you remember, we have to set the credit warnings in the sales and receivables setup to select either exceeded, overdue, both or none. We can also set up the credit limit on our customer card, and we've seen examples of the credit warnings that we will get under those circumstances. We've had a look at running our accounts receivable report and looked at the various options, run through the various filterings and the fact that we can export to Excel, and we can show the report either in a detailed or in a summary view. And then we had a look at the reminders letters, how we set up the reminders first of all in the reminder terms. Under those reminder terms, the letters, the number of letters that we want to send out to our customers, and gone through how we use the beginning and end text, including how we can include our variables, our percent and a number field, so that we can have variable fields coming in with data from the customer or the reminder card itself. We've had a look at running the reminders themselves from the period activities, both from a singular point of view, batch job to generate for all our customers, and then how we can issue and print the reminders. I hope that you've enjoyed this session, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you for joining us.